Hello everyone, welcome to this class. I'm going to show us here how we can build a to-do list using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and also styling it with TailwindCSS. So what does this to-do list do? Let me say I have something like cook food, probably one of the things I want to do. I want to cook food. So if I hit enter, I will see the stuff coming in there. So if I want to play piano, I can also have that showing me there. Okay. So if I have another item, like go to sports, and I will have that coming in there. Okay. So whenever I refresh this page, I will actually see that this is not refreshing because it's being stored within local storage. So they're not going out. And once I delete an item, the item goes. So when I refresh, I only have the two items remaining. And I can mark it, you can see it has a faint color. Once I mark, and I can unmark and actually toggle this. Okay, and even if I mark and I refresh, this thing will still remain marked. Okay, so if I close this, let's say I close this and maybe I try to open it up again, I will always see those things being stored because they're still stored within the local storage. And if I delete all, that have been deleted. So when there's nothing again on my local storage. So we see how we create this using Tailwind CSS and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So to start off quite easily, I can just open my terminal. On CMD. I can simply click to open my terminal, and we continue from there. I'm going to create an entirely new file while working on this. So from my terminal, I can simply create, CD, I can create a directory, or I can first of all move to the desktop. Let me just put this on the desktop, and I can create a directory called to do, and I can just initialize Git inside it and say Git init to do, Git init to do. Okay, so Git init to do, which will create a folder called to do, and it will, so I can just cd into that folder to do, and I can open it with code editor by saying code space dot. So I will trigger code editor to open that for me. And I can easily navigate to Google and go to Tailwind CSS. So I can just go to the Tailwind CSS websites and then get an installation on how I can create this using Tailwind CSS. So it has opened here. I have my file opening here, and okay. So I can just go to get started, and I'll be able to build the installation of Tailwind CSS here. So I can simply take this line. So I will copy it. Okay. So from my Visual Studio Code, I can just go and do npm init. So that will actually, so I've just opened my terminal on Visual Studio Code, Ctrl+Shift+Backtick, and I'll be able to switch to bash terminal. You just get to bash, and so for my bash terminal, I can say npm init. So npm init will help me to initialize node package module, which will create a package.json file for me on my terminal. So it's asking me this. I just accept all the defaults. I can always change all this author and all that. So everything is okay. So I have this package.json initialized for me here. Okay. So I can go ahead and paste the code for installation of Tailwind CSS. So while that is going on, I can create my index page. I can call it index.html. I can just create it and put up my boilerplate using exclamation mark, and I can call it to-do list. So to-do list. So I can simply start working from here. So while that is going on, I can start setting up my file, what I need to be able to create this index page the way I want it. So so the first thing I will need to do is to create, well, it depends on how I want to start, but let's start off simple. Let's start off by creating a main element. So I can simply say I have a main element, and inside my main element, I will have a H1. I will have a H1 element called to-do. I can say to-do list. Okay, you can customize it to call it anything you want. And after my to-do list, I can have the form and create my form element. So I normally don't like when I'm just doing basic front end something to have my form element containing an input, those action tag. So I will just put my input. So I'm using input for text. My input for text, I can actually give it a name of item. So this is the place where we're going to. So I can just say item, and a placeholder, and just give it a placeholder of add your item, add your item, add your to-do item, item. So whatever you want to call it, and after this, add my to-do item, I can just create a list. We can be seeing this thing runtime, how it is actually working. Okay, I can just create an ordered list. Let me say an ordered list of li, okay, li, let me say li times, let me just put an li now. Let me just put an li now. Okay, so all right, so my TailwindCSS are finished installing. Let's continue the and set up our TailwindCSS. So I can just do npx TailwindCSS init to initialize TailwindCSS in this. So these are just the initial. So this will create for me a Tailwind CSS configuration, so which I'm going to change my configuration here. I can just follow up what is happening on the website and can simply click to copy this first line. So this is just the line that I need to change, and I simply replace this content with that line there. Okay, I don't want to work with a source directory, so I simply remove that source directory. So this will be listening to any file that is .html or .js file. Okay, so of course it has to listen to our .js file because we have to using that. So I'll copy this and I will create an input.css. I can just create any CSS file of my choice. I mustn't necessarily follow up what they are doing there. So I can just create a file, I can call it style.css. Okay, so I will paste that file.css there. I will paste it there. So once I have actually done that, I'll just take this, but this will be on my, I have to create a dev dependency for this. Okay, so going straight to my package.json, after my test file, I can just put a comma and I include a dev dependency for it, and I will paste that. So I'm going to remove this anyway. Okay, so I will just remove this, and definitely I have style.css and not input.css. So I just call this style.css, and I don't want this to create a disk folder for me. So I can simply just put it there to create a disk folder for me. So after I've done this, I will now come to my terminal and say npm run dev, npm run dev. So this will make sure that my dev dependency, and then it's going to create an output.css for me once I have done that. So an output.css has been created, which is this. So this is the one I'm going to link to my HTML. right? So I'm going to link this output.css to my HTML. So going straight to my HTML, I can just link the output.css there. So link CSS, normal way you link CSS, so dot slash, I select output.css. So I can close this. So let me create my JS file. So this is my JS file. I'll call it todo.js. So my todo.js will actually listen to my JS file. So again, I will just include the link just after the body, and just put my scripts and script source dot slash todo.js. So I've included that there. So I can comfortably close this panel now, so that if I'm previewing my work, I want to preview to see how my page looks like. Okay, so I can simply use the HTML preview that I have here. Okay, so you can see how my page is looking like. And yeah, my CSS has been installed. So I can just try to put up some style for this stuff now. I can just go to the body elements and I include some style in the body element. I can just say, give me the body element to have a BG blue. Maybe blue 600 is fine. So just give me a BG of blue 600. Okay. So terminal is running and okay, you can see it's working. So that is fine. Can go to the main, can go to the main element, and I can tell the main to have a class, can give it a class, TailwindCSS, can give it a class of flex, can give it a class of flex, and so I want the flex to be flex cool. So I want it to be cool, I don't want it to be. So I can simply justify everything on the center and item center too. So I can simply say item center, justify center, and I can give it a gap, just maybe a gap of 3. Okay, so that is fine. That is fine. It is fine. So for the H1 too, I can simply give a H1 a class of probably uppercase. I want it to be capital letter uppercase, and I want the fonts to, I can change the font to be sans. Okay, I can simply say font sans. So font sans, okay, so the font to be sans, and I want the font to be bold. So I can just tell it that the font should also be bold. Font bold, okay, font bold, okay. So that deals it with that one, and I can go to the form, and give the form a class. I can give the form a class, and maybe I want it to flex it. So it should be flex, and the flex should be cool. Flex it as a column, okay, and the gap should be maybe gap can give it a gap of 4. Okay, so can give spacing within that one. Okay, so let's say in this my li, and my li can have something like a span. So this is how I want my li to look like. So let me say I have a span here, and this span can be 3 of them. Alt Shift arrow down. And let me say here I have food. I have food, and I want it to have a class of I want it to have something like mark, okay, so that I can have mark, and then I can have not just mark, I can have delete. So this will be like a delete button. Okay, so when I click on this, I should be able to do that, and then I will delete the button. Okay, so that is very important that we understand that part. Okay, so the thing is, I need to style also this. I need to style these buttons how I want them to appear. So I can just go to my style.css, I can go to my style.css and add some styles there, some common things that I want them to apply, because I want a situation when if I click on this, it should apply on every other one. So I can say for form, let me say for form, li and the span inside it, for form li and the span inside it at apply. I want it to apply. I want this to apply. So I want the cursor to be pointer. Maybe I want cursor pointer. So this is still TailwindCSS that I'm writing here. I want cursor pointer and I want padding on the left and right axis. I want padding on the left and right axis to be like 3. I want it to be like 3. The padding on the left and right axis to be like 3. And I want padding at the top axis to be like 1. BY1. And maybe I want the text to be capitalized. I want the text to be capitalized. So I want the first letter to start with capital letter, unless the person decides to. Okay, I want it to also be rounded Excel. I want it to be rounded Excel. So I want it to be rounded Excel. So yeah. All right. So nothing is applying yet. Okay. So that is fine for now. I can just say form li, form ul li. Let me just write normal CSS. So display it as a grid, DG, display it as a grid. And after you have displayed it as a grid, so you can see it's the hover is work is coming up now. Display grid and grid template column. Grid template column should just be 3 and 1 fraction each. 3, 1 fraction each. So and then I want the gap. I want the gap there to be like the gap between each one. Probably I should just give it like 50%, 50 px, not percent, 50 px, and margin at the top to be like 30 pixels. Okay, margin at the top to be like 30 pixels. So I can look at the first span. And I can say something like form li, span. I mean the second span, like I want to style it, so I can just say ends of type, ends of type, ends of type, ends of type, ends of type. No, okay, ends of type 2, the second one. Okay, ends of type 2. At apply, what do I want it to apply to it? I want it to have a background color, a BG color of BG color. Let me just give it red. Red 400. So you can say BG red, red 400. Okay. So and I can do the same thing to the last of type. Maybe the last of type, I'm going to give it, okay, I can now say last of type here. So last of type. Of course, if I'm using last of type, there's no need for me to have this. So I can just, on the same range, but I can say this one will not be yellow. This one will not be yellow. Okay, so yellow 400. Yeah, well, I don't really know why this is taking some time to come up. Okay, you can actually see that the text has come up. Okay, so I can make the text color to be white. So I can say text white, and probably the same thing here too. The text should also be white. Text should also be white, and I can actually see these things having a text of white. It's taking some time to come up, but that is fine. So this is just how I want this to be. So meaning that if within my list, elements. If I go back to my HTML, if I go back to my HTML file and maybe I have another list, okay? I have another list and I will notice that that thing will apply, okay? Sports, maybe this one is for sports. I will notice that the same thing will equally apply to this. So that is fine. I have given this the basic things that I want it to have. Okay, so next thing is I have to start styling using my CSS. So I have to remove this text white here and put it in the form. Okay, so that I can put it in this place. I can say color white. So color should be white. Okay, so maybe tick white. Okay, so it will also apply to the food too, and not just to this. So we've got the CSS up and running, and the next thing we have to do is to go and start giving our JavaScript. Our JavaScript is the next thing that we need to start doing. So navigating to my JavaScript panel, and I have my todo.js file here. So open it. So my todo.js, I have to start. I can say transform. UL. Okay. Okay, so we continue. One preview. All right, so from our to-do, you can say form EL. That is the form elements, just decide to call it form EL. Document dot query selector. So I'm selecting the elements with a class of form, and I can look at the input too. I want to select the input, so I can say const input, call it input, equal to document dot query selector. Just select the input. I don't have any other input elements here, so it should just select it. Okay. So I can look at the UL, which is const UL elements, and I can just say const UL element to be equal to document dot query selector, select the UL elements. So I can just do that, and then I need to add an event listener to this form, because look at this form. If I type something within these input elements, so I'm not actually seeing it very well. So I think I need to change the color of that text there. So I'm going to go back to the index elements, and let me just give it a little class. Let's see. Can give it some class. Here's the input. So the input should have a class. Okay. Let's give it a class. Text. I want the text to be black. Text black. So, well, if I'm typing the text now, and see. So if I type something like food here and everything, so I won't be seeing this thing very well with this. So I had better open it with my live server. So can view my preview much better with my live server. So I'll just push this one side and my preview can come this side. Okay, fine. So if let me remove the outline when I click on it. So I can simply say outline. No, don't want the outline there. So to say So when I click on it, there is no outline. Okay. So if I type something, I hit enter. If you look at my browser, you notice that whenever I type something and I hit enter, I can see that my browser is refreshing. So I want to stop this refreshing from happening so that whenever I click enter, I don't want my browser to be refreshing. Okay, so I have to write a function. I have to give this my form an event listener. I want it to handle events, so I can say form el dot add event listener. I can add event listener, and I will call the event that is listening to. I want it to listen to a submit event. And what is the function that is going to listen to? I will call the function handle click. Okay, handle click. So this handle click function, I have not created it, and I'm going to go straight away to create this handle click function. So I will say function handle click. Okay. So function handle click, and I will pass it a parameter. I will give it a parameter called e or events. It can be e or events. So you can say give it a parameter e, and what is that e going to do for me? I say e dot prevent default. Prevent default. So this prevent default is always used is always used to stop the browser from refreshing whenever we type something on the browser. So it's going to stop the browser from refreshing. Okay. So if I type something here and I hit enter, I can see that it's not submitting anything, and therefore my browser is not refreshing. So this refresh doesn't happen again. Okay, so if I type something here and I hit enter, my browser does not refresh again. So that is fine. So that is not just what I want it to do. I want this handle click to handle a function. Can call the function to do lists. Can call the function to do lists. I want to call this function to do this whenever I hit that enter. Okay, so what do I want the to-do list to do for me? I want it to, so I'm going to create that function to-do list. Remember, one awesome thing about functions is that I can even declare the function before I ever use a function. So it allows me to declare it before I use it. So I can say let's new can say new to do, because I want a situation when if I hit enter here, it should enter as an option in this to do. Okay, it will enter there. So let new to do be equal to input elements. So I better call this input element instead of saying input system. So I can just say input element. So let it be equal to input element dot value. So get me the value there. Let it be the dot. Let it be dot value. Okay. Let it be that's the dot. So let me assume that I have console. I can say console.log, console.log, console.log new to do. So let's say I'm logging out new to do now. Okay, so I can just open my console. Let's see whether that works. I can just open my console and so I can simply open my console here and let's see what happens whenever I enter something here. So I click this, probably I enter this. If I hit enter, you can see it's appearing on that to do. So if I say green, I hit enter, you can see it's appearing there. So it is extracting the code and is also putting it on the console. Okay. So, but one thing that it also does is that when when I hit this enter, my input is still staying up, but that is not a problem for now. Let's just close this and still continue. So, but this is not what I want it to do. I want it to enter as a list here, but this progressively we've been able to do that. So for me to be able to do that, so I can remove this thing now. For me to be able to do that, I need to create a list element. So I can say const li elements is equal to documents dot create elements, document dot create elements. So I'm creating an element li, creating an element called li. Okay, so and because this element li, by example of what we have in our index.html, I can see that our li has a span. It has 3 spans. So I'm going to also create those 3 spans and all that. Okay. So that is pretty much what we have to do. So I can simply Alt Shift down and let me say li, we call it list li span 1 and say span 1. So this span 1 is creating span. So I can just do that and I can call this span 2, span 3. Okay. So span 1, span 2, span 3, I'm going to put them inside. I'm going to put them inside the li. So I can actually say li element dot append. So append child. Let me just use append child. It's append child. So what am I appending to it? I'm appending this span 1 to it, and I can also append span 3 and also span 2. Okay, so the UL itself is where I will now append span 1. So I will now append span 1 inside the UL itself. So I can say UL element dot append child. I can just append li span 1 inside it. Okay, so that is fine. So if I have something like I gym today, and I hit enter, I can actually notice that something is happening here, but I've not given this a test content. I've not given it a test content. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my li, the test content of my li is going to, the test content of my li will actually come from the input elements. Okay, so I can just say span 1, li span 1, li span 1 dot inner text. Can use inner text to be equal to input el dot value. Okay, so I can do the same thing for, so for this one, for span 3 is going to be delete. It's going to be delete. For span 2 is going to be mark. It's going to be mark. So this will be for span 2 and this will be for span 3. Okay, so I go again and I can say today gym and I hit enter. I can see is entering there. So and it's entering there. So if I add another thing again, if I say play piano, I hit enter, you can see it's entering there. So these two default elements that I have here I can decide now to go to my li and just remove them. I don't really need them anymore. So I don't have anything here again. So if I say play piano and I enter and I say gym, I can say play football. Play football. If I hit enter, it will go. And if I add another thing, sing in church, hit enter, it can also appear there. So that is fine, and we have been able to create this. But one thing again that is happening is that the list is not getting empty whenever this is still I have this like the list is not empty whenever I enter something from here. Okay, my input is still having some text there. So, and I need to return to make sure that input.value, I want the input to return to be empty whenever I enter this. So I can simply say input.value to be an empty string. Okay, so this means that anytime I enter something, I hit enter, the string becomes empty. Okay, I can say go format and I hit enter, it becomes empty. So the next challenge that we'll be faced with, we need to make sure that this is, if I click on this, I want it to strike this text, and if I click on this delete button, I want to be able to delete this text whenever I strike that. So that will be our next challenge in the coming class. So I can decide to add an event listener to this. So this, my Mac needs to have an event listener, the same thing with this delete, so that when I click on it, it should delete, and when I click on it, it should mark it. Okay. Okay, so let me start with li span 2. Li span 2 elements. Okay, li span 2. So I can say dot add event listener, and the events I want it to listen to is a click event. I want it to listen to a click event, and I can simply write the function inside, okay, using an arrow function, because I have to use it as a callback. I have to write a function inside. So what do I want it to do? I want list span 1. I want list span 1 to have a class. I want it to have a class, okay, dot class list. Okay, I can just create a class list, list span 1. I think I have list span 1 dot class list. Okay, the class list I want to give it is, I want to be able to toggle it. Okay, dot toggle. Okay, list span 1 dot class list dot toggle. So, and how will I want it to toggle it? I want it to toggle it by adding I want it to toggle it by adding a line through it. Let me just say a line through, because line through is what you can use to create a line across something. So that is for list span 1, actually. List span 1, actually. So why am I having another line here? Problem with my code. Okay, I don't have this, another function I should have arrow here. Okay, so I want it to have a line through whenever I do that. So let me enter the course again. So when I click on it, you can see, and it's toggling, meaning it can check and uncheck. So I can also add more things that I want it to happen whenever I do that too. So I can just bring this down. I want to include another class. Probably I want the text to be black. So I can say text black. I'm using TailwindCSS because that is, so anytime I refresh, this will definitely go off, okay? So if I hit, you can see the text is black, it goes back. So let's actually look into the console and see what is happening here, okay? Not actually into the console, in the element section for HTML. So just watch for us to see what is actually happening within these lists, okay? So I'm going to scroll and get to the form, and let's look at that list. Yeah, we are there. So I can just see what is happening here. So if I check this, you can see the class goes, and if I check it, it comes back black. If I check it, it goes. If I check it, it comes back black. And that is awesome. Okay, so it's working. So I'm going to write a function to handle click so that whenever I excuse me. So whenever I click on this tool, you should be able to delete that list. Okay. So I'm going to write for that. So I want that to also apply to list element 3 for span 3 dot add event listener. So I'm going to also give it a click event. So whenever I click on it, a particular function should run. Particular function should run. So which function do I want it to run? I want it to remove that list, which is li dot remove dot remove. So just call this method to remove that list for me whenever I have that. So I can just say, this doesn't mean anything. So I can just say, go to church, go to church, go to gym, go to gym, and I can just say travel, probably travel. I can just have more, okay, spend time reading, spend time reading. So, and if I click on mark, it will mark it. If I click on delete, you can see it has deleted it. If I click on delete, this goes and this one stays this way. So I'm actually done with this. The only thing remaining is anytime we refresh this page, this whole thing refreshes. So we need to store this in our local storage so that whenever we refresh, the page does not refresh. I mean, I can still have that staying there whenever I refresh. So I'm going to write a function that will handle that part of the code for me. So I'll be able to update this whenever I refresh it. So I want it to stay. So fine, right? So after that, I'm going to let's just so this is for local storage. So let me just put a comment for local storage, local storage. So this is going to store up our files locally. So I'm going to create a function for that, a function, and the function is going to be updates. I can call it update local, update local, update local, update local. Let me say update local storage. Okay, update local storage, update local storage. And I want to handle all the list elements. So I can just call it LIELS, capital E, all the list elements, because definitely it's not one list element I'm going to have anytime I enter something here. So if I have things here, and then this is a list element, this is also a list element. So I want to create a constant that will handle all the list elements. So I'm going to do that using document dot query selector all, query selector all. So I'm going to handle all the li, and not just the li, but the span that is first of type. All the li span first of type. first of type. Okay, so because it's the each of them that I want to handle the first type of each one. Okay, so I'm going to create an array and say let's list be equal to an empty array. So I need to update this. So I don't want to put this list here. So because I want it to be updated, so I better create the lists. Let me create the empty array before here. So I can say let list be equal to, let me just put it an empty array for now. Okay, we will see how we can be able. So that list is still what I'm calling up here. Still what I'm calling up here. So for each list element, for all the list elements, so I'm going to use for each, okay. So for each is going to take a function. For each somehow it behaves to like an array. So let me just illustrate a little bit of this for each. Let's say I have an array of, you can call it ARR to be equal to an array of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can say ARR dot for each of them dot for each of them. So what I want it to do, I want it to be like x and x times 2. Probably I want to multiply each of them by 2. So and when I call ARR, okay, so for each element, I can actually just use it to update each of these. So it's practically updates it, but it's not going to return it as an updated value. Okay, so that is what for each does. It's not like what map does. Map will update and then you'll be able to see what map has updated. So for each doesn't allow you to see things that way. So I'm going to use for each here because for each let me say li, I can call it li span one. So what do I want it to do to each of them? So what do I want it to do for them? I want it to push inside the list. I want to push inside this list. I want to put something inside this list item dot push. I want to put something inside it. And what do I want to put inside it? Okay, so I want to put an object inside it. So I can just start by saying name. Okay, name, and I can say name is coming from li span one dot inner text. So inner text. Okay, so I want to push the name of the text. Okay, and I want to look at if a box is checked. So I can simply give it, I could have called it anything anyway. So if checked, I want li span one dot class list, and say class list li span one dot class list. I'm checking if it is checked. So this is like a Boolean attribute that contains, does it contain, let me maximize this screen so be able to see better. li.1, does it contain a class of, what is that text color again? Does it contain a class of, looking for where okay, does it contain text black? I'm looking for it. So does it contain a class of text of black? Okay, so I want to also check, okay, I can also check whether there is a line through in it. Does it also contain line through text? Okay, So I want to be able to save up this thing. So I can just call this one line. I can just call it line, and let me put a comma here because this will return an error to me. So this is what I want to push inside the local storage whenever I do this. Okay. So and okay, I have this and I have this here. So after this, I'm going to store all this in my local storage by giving it local storage dot set item. So use set item to store up something. I can use get item to get something from the local storage, just like I can use set item to set something there. So what I want to put in there is list. I want to call it list, and I can also use I can put it as a string using JSON. So JSONify it dot stringify list. So stringify, okay, stringify that list. Okay, so stringify is used in object. Let me just give it another name. I can call it um, to-dos. Can call it to-dos. Okay, so can just call it to-dos, and that is the name I gave it. So stringify this list. So this object that is coming in here from push, I want to stringify it. Okay, so because when I put up an object here, I can convert it from being an array of objects. Now it will just get to being a JSON file. Okay, so I'm going back to go back to where I declare this list here. Okay, instead of me giving it to be an array now, I can just return it as a JSON.parse so that I can convert it back to what it used to be. Okay, so and I'm looking at the local storage dot get item, local storage dot get item, and the item I want to get is an item which I call to-dos. It's an item which I call to-dos. Okay. So, and that is basically that. And one more thing, I can also look through that my to-do. I can just look at list, that's this list now, dot for each of the tags, dot for each tags, can call it tags now. That means I have to pass this thing as a prop inside tags, okay? Dot for each tag, just call to do of tags, okay? To do. So my to-do list is now taking a parameter called tags. So this tags now, I have to pass it into my to-do list. So my to-do function will now take a parameter called tags. So that is it. That is it. That actually does it. So is that enough for us now? Without, okay, so I need to call up this function at each point. This function of this storage, I need to make sure that I'm calling it at each point. Okay, I will call it here when I added the event listener. I will call it for the event listener on this click. So after this, I can just call update local storage. I will just call it. I will also call it here again. Okay, I need to also call it here. To also call it here update storage. Okay, update storage, and I will also need to. I will also need to call it. Do I still need to call it again? I still need to call it here update storage. The storage. So let's go back and see how this really plays out. So if I add something here, if I add say spend time reading, practice JS, Okay. Okay. So if I refresh my page, I can actually see that this thing is not okay, fine. Let's look at what is happening on the local storage. Probably there's still something where I open inspect elements and I view my local storage. So the file is staying, but I'm not seeing the text. So I go through application to see what exactly is happening in my local storage. So the name is not being captured, okay, in my local storage, but it is capturing the it's capturing this. So if I click this, it turns to false. If I click on this, it turns to true. Okay. So it gives me that false true when I delete an item, it goes. So I have this one now remaining. So anytime I refresh, this is staying. But one more thing, the text is not being saved. So let's look at why is the text not being saved. We need to update the text to make sure this text is being saved. So if I refresh this page, like I refresh it, I see my text is not being stored, and I've seen it from the local storage too that is not keeping my text. So if I come here and I look at my local storage, I can easily find that using application. I can see my local storage here with name to do's, but it's not picking the name. It's not picking the name. Okay, the name is empty. And okay, so let me just delete. That's deleted. I don't have it here again. So let's just come. Let's look at. Okay, fine. And okay, so I think what is happening is that I'm not updating the name on the local storage. I'm not updating it in any way. So I can update the name by, I can easily say if, I can use an if statement to try to update the name here. So, okay, so let me try to say if tax, if the tax exists, because this tax I passed in as a props here, I'm not really making use of it. So if tax is there, I want the new to do to be the same thing as tax.name. Tax.name. Okay, so I will check whether that's really correct what I have there. So I enter again, I hit enter, I have this here. So if I refresh, I'm not still picking it. Right. So okay, so I will try to finish up with that. Okay, so finally, okay, let's say if if tax exists, if tax exists, if that is not enough for it, if tax exists and I have tax dots and I have tax dot checked, okay, and I have tax dot line. So if all these things exist, if they exist, and I want li of span1 dot class list, I want it to have a class list I want it to have a class list. So that means I have to add now. I have to add a class list of, I'll add a class list of line through. I'll give it a class list of line through and or shift arrow down. And I want to also give it a class list of text black. Text black. So so if these two conditions are met, so if I have tags here in my to-do, so this takes the list of push, it pushes it, contains this, okay. So that is it. That should be able to do that. And if this condition is being met, tags dot new to do, this new to do is coming from here. It should be able to have the new to do coming from here. So let new to do be equal to that. And I'm now resetting the new to do instead of being tags.name. That is for the local storage anyway. So we can just check it out. So if I say go to gym, and let me just use another browser. Let's say go to gym. Okay, so I have the text appearing, and when I refresh, I will still see that my text stays in there. And so when I say read some books, just browser compatibility that is doing this. So if I refresh, the text are not clearing, I still have them there. If I delete and I refresh, this still remains safe. Okay, so that is just a quick one with that, and you can actually see how easy it is to get the whole thing done. All right, so meet you in the next.